aviation history is full of contradictions. The aircraft that never enter production often shape the future more than those that do. They vanish into classified archives, yet their ideas quietly reappear decades later in the world's most advanced fighters. One of the clearest examples is the X-44 MANTA, a radical tailless stealth concept from the late 1990s, whose fingerprints are now unmistakably visible on Boeing's upcoming sixth-generation F-47. What was once dismissed as an over-ambitious experiment has now become the foundation of America's next leap in air dominance. The birth of a radical idea. In the late 1990s, NASA and the U.S. Air Force began exploring whether a fighter could be built without a traditional tail. Conventional aircraft rely heavily on vertical and horizontal stabilizers for maneuvering and stability, but these surfaces also create significant radar reflections. Removing them could dramatically improve stealth, reduce drag, and increase fuel capacity. With this bold vision, the multi-axis no-tail aircraft program, better known as the X-44 MANTA, was born. The MANTA wasn't just a new airframe, it was a challenge to everything engineers thought they knew about fighter design. Its geometry was built around a sleek, stretched delta wing without any vertical fins. Many of its components, including the fuselage and twin F-119 engines, came directly from the F-22 Raptor. However, the MANTA's internal volume and wing shape allowed far more space for fuel, giving the aircraft significantly greater range. In a world where long-distance operations were becoming increasingly important, this was a major advantage. What made the X-44 extraordinary wasn't just its shape, but the engineering philosophy behind it. Instead of relying on traditional control surfaces, the aircraft would use advanced 3D thrust vectoring to manage pitch, yaw, and roll. That meant the engines themselves would steer the aircraft, while aerodynamic surfaces served only as secondary aids. At the time, this sounded almost like science fiction, a fighter powered and steered by pure engine force, laying the scientific groundwork. Before MANTA could be taken seriously, engineers needed evidence that thrust-controlled flight was actually possible. Over the previous decade, the Air Force and NASA had been quietly developing a series of flying laboratories to test these theories. One of the most important was the F-15 Active, a modified F-15B equipped with a smart flight control system and thrust vectoring nozzles. It demonstrated that engines could enhance maneuverability and stabilize the aircraft at extreme angles of attack. These experiments escalated with the propulsion-controlled aircraft program. Engineers modified an F-15 so that the aircraft could fly and even land using engine thrust alone while simulating complete failure of its traditional flight surfaces. Not long after, the Vista F-16 MATV program took things further with multi-axis thrust vectoring, proving that a fighter could maintain yaw, pitch, and roll control at high angles of attack without depending on a tail. By the time the X-44 concept emerged, the science was clear. Thrust could replace traditional flight control surfaces. A tailless fighter was no longer a dream. It was achievable. What remained uncertain was whether the Air Force would be willing to fund something so futuristic. The X-44A, the hidden prototype. While the MANTA remained a paper concept, Lockheed Martin's Skunk Works quietly built a related unmanned demonstrator known as the X-44A. This small drone, constructed with advanced nanocarbon composite materials and powered by a Williams F-12 engine, was far more than a model. It was a functional testbed for tailless stealth aerodynamics. It flew successfully in 2001 but remained classified until 2018, when it was finally revealed during Skunk Works' 75th anniversary. Although the X-44A wasn't a direct-scale model of the MANTA, it belonged to the same family of tailless research. Its wingspan was about half that of the later RQ-170 Sentinel. Another Skunk Works creation that would become famous over Afghanistan and Iran reports suggested that, like the RQ-170, the X-44A had detachable wings for easy transport. Together, these projects demonstrated that tailless platforms were not theoretical. They were already flying. Why the MANTA never took flight? Despite the momentum behind thrust vectoring research, the X-44 program was cut in 2000. The timing simply wasn't right. The US was fully focused on ramping up the F-22 program, launching the F-35 project, and preparing for a shifting global security landscape. A revolutionary new aircraft shape with massive funding requirements didn't fit the Pentagon's priorities. However, the technology was not abandoned. Ideas from the MANTA resurfaced in proposals to modify the F-22 into a long-range bomber version known as the FB-22 elements of the X-44's design philosophy, composite structures, tailless aerodynamics, and digital control systems, migrated into classified UAV projects. In many ways, the X-44 became a stepping stone between early stealth drones like the RQ-3 Darkstar and later operational systems like the RQ-170. Even though the MANTA never left the ground, its influence spread through decades of American black-budget aviation. It just remained invisible to the public. The rebirth of the tailless fighter. By the mid-2020s, the global battlefield had changed dramatically. Air defense networks had grown more capable, operational distances across the Pacific had become crucial, and electronic warfare was increasingly shaping every mission. Suddenly, all the challenges the X-44 aimed to solve had become national priorities. This is where Boeing's sixth-generation fighter, the F-47, enters the picture. From the moment early design images leaked, aerospace observers noticed something familiar. The F-47 carried the signature shape the MANTA had pioneered. A broad blended wing, no vertical tail, minimal external edges, and an aerodynamic body optimized for stealth. Its smooth silhouette and enormous wing hinted at long-range missions across the Indo-Pacific. Its stealth-first design philosophy aligned perfectly with the Air Force's need to penetrate increasingly advanced Chinese air defenses. Even more revealing was the propulsion technology behind the F-47. Contracts worth more than $3.5 billion were signed with GE and Pratt & Whitney to develop adaptive cycle engines, power plants capable of dramatically shifting between fuel-efficient and high-thrust modes. Such engines are perfect for long-range stealthy missions, and even more importantly for advanced thrust vectoring control. While Boeing has not released official details of the F-47's propulsion system, the logic points to a design heavily reliant on engine-based control, just like the X-44 envisioned. The rise of the fighter drone ecosystem. There is another connection between the MANTA and the F-47, the integration of unmanned aircraft. The X-44A was an early demonstration of how tailless stealth platforms could function in unmanned roles. The F-47 takes this idea to the next level. Instead of being unmanned itself, it will command multiple autonomous drones in combat. Each F-47 is expected to operate as the lead aircraft in a loyal wingman swarm, coordinating at least 2 but potentially up to 8 combat drones. These drones may conduct electronic warfare, surveillance, or direct strike missions. Essentially, each F-47 becomes not just a fighter but a force multiplier. An airborne commander that transforms a single aircraft into an entire tactical unit. With 185 F-47s planned, the U.S. Air Force effectively gains a much larger distributed fleet capable of overwhelming enemy defenses through coordination and digital warfare. The legacy of the X-44 lives on. The similarities between the X-44 MANTA and the F-47 are not accidental. The X-44 introduced an entirely new design language. Tailless flight, thrust-based control, larger internal volume, and digital flight systems that blend engine and aerodynamic commands today. These ideas are at the heart of nearly every sixth-generation fighter under development in the US, Europe, and Asia. The difference is that Boeing's F-47 has something the X-44 never had: a real production timeline. The aircraft is expected to fly for the first time in 2028 and enter service in the early 2030s. What began as an experiment hidden in research labs is now becoming the fighter that will dominate the skies over the next generation. If you enjoyed uncovering the story behind this secret aircraft lineage, make sure to hit that like and subscribe. Thanks for watching, stay sharp, and we'll see you in the next one.